So, sir, I'll be speaking on globe hypotony, cause, sequelae, and management. And though rare, complications related to retinal surgery can have serious consequences. Unfortunately, most are preventable if detected early. And the common complications we all encounter are globe perforation, light toxicity, drug toxicity, post-operative hypotony, iatrogenic tears, etc. These are rare because intraoperative hypotony is rare because of modern VR tools, the use of word cannulas and advanced fluidics, but still can occur in the hands of the most experienced surgeons also. And early recognition and management prevents potentially devastating complications in these cases. So the basic logic behind the globe hypotony is one, that is there is a mismatch of infusion and aspiration, and that can be due to blocked or a leaking infusion cannula, kinked infusion cannula, a high suction and a low bottle height, active aspiration which is not matching your IOP pressure, non-walled cannulas, and disinsertion of the infusion as many videos were shown. And while working under air during vitrectomy, temporary globe collapse is there. More specifically, under open cannula conditions such as frequent instrument exchange with non-walled cannulas, globe hypotony can occur. And for the in the sequelae part, possibility of a myriad complications depending when this complication occurs. It can lead to bleeding, it can lead to iatrogenic tears because of a sudden globe collapse, it can lead to anterior lens touch and a cataract formation, corneal edema, hazy view, submacular hemorrhage, as Dr. Lalit mentioned, and choroidal detachment. The management, the first part of the management is to identify early signs of hypotony, and next is to identify the cause and to rectify it immediately. And the last is to manage complications that have already occurred in this process of rectifying it. So checking machine parameters, external support to the infusion line, like double taping or taping the infusion line, and vigilance to surrounding a part from the surgical field. And plug should be placed to secure fluid airflow through the cannulas, prevents hypotony due to excessive fluid flow through the sclerotomies. So I'll be sharing few videos and a few scenarios where globe hypotony can occur and what to do in case globe hypotony causes complications. So this is a video of a of a traumatic endophthalmitis case, and in which we have already put a 6 cannula, but the block is incomplete because of the inflammation, and the patient is squeezing so much that the cannula is kicked again and again, and even a 6 can the lid is pushing towards the 6 cannula, and it's causing globe hypotony. And it's always good in these cases, just not to rush things, and augment your block so that the patient is comfortable, the surgeon is comfortable, and the eye is open widely with the speculum, and there is no tangling of the wires of the instrumentation. So we just gave augmented a subtenous block in this case, and that's a very useful way without risking a globe perforation intraoperatively. Also, it gives a perfect block, and now you can see the speculum is wide open, and there is no squeezing of the eye, and we could continue our surgery. During fluid air exchange, globe hypotony can occur. So this is a case of a routine macular hole, as you can see. And after the ILM peeling, when we went under air, we aspirated the fluid. And when accidentally, actually, when the cutter was in the air part and you are using active aspiration, at that time, the globe hypotony occurred. As you can see, there will be a contraction here. So your instrument should be in the fluid and not in the air when using the active suction. Of course, if you're using a passive suction, it does not matter much. Of course, 6 cannula is very helpful in cases where there is large amount of bleeding or the view is very hazy. But even after using 6 cannula, you have to make sure that the tip is inside the vitreous cavity and not cause globe hypotony in the intraoperative period. As you can see, even in this 6 cannula, the tip is covered by the tissue, and we have to use another instrument to dissect all the tissue around that cannula. So I'm using the trocar blade and to remove the tissue over the tip of the 6 cannula. Now the tip is seen and you can start the infusion safely. So we have all seen that during in diabetic vitrectomy everything is fine, and while going under air and after all the procedures completed, there is some amount of bleeding, and you can check for these oozers and coagulate them or you can just simply aspirate them. So during air, if there is a little hypotony, these bleeders come up, and it's actually good. So you can identify them and rectify all these bleeders, so that post-operatively in the first day there are the retina is dry and not filled up with blood. So this was again a macular hole surgery in which the things were going very smoothly, and during the vitrectomy part, the cannula was disinserted, and we caught it early, and you can see the choroidal detachment uh, temporarily, and then we reinserted the cannula again, and we continued with the ILM peeling, and the surgery then went off successfully. So it's very important to see not just the part where you are operating, like in macular hole, you are always concentrated on the macula and the ILM peeling, but also frequently give a glimpse to the periphery, and you can identify these problems early enough so that these cases can be rectified and you have a satisfactory post-operative outcome. This was a case of a IOL drop in attempted SICS, and some amounts of nuclear fragments were also there. And the mistake here, what I was doing was I thought that the wound was secure enough. I did not suture it for the IOL removal. I thought I will remove the IOL through that wound. And as you can see, while I'm removing the IOL, attempting to remove, there is some trickle bleed, which from the surgical field, it has gone through the SICS wound and into the posterior pole. So we had to remove that, sutured the SICS wound, and cleared the trickle bleed which had settled on the posterior pole, and removed the IOL after that. This is the PVD injection part, and now the vitreous cavity is clean. Myopic RDs are very prone to hypotony and their insults, and they frequently lead to choroidal bleeds. As in this case, you can see immediately after starting the surgery, there is a streak blood submacular, but the amount of the blood, after injecting PFCL did not increase, and so we continued the surgery and did not drain it. And at the end of the surgery, the amount of blood was the same, and post-operatively after a week or so, it disappeared. So a small amount of bleeds are common in myopic RDs, and they don't need to be removed. But in this case, because of the hypotony, there was a large bleed, and this is the lattice with the break, the original lattice, and we had to enlarge it, to drain all the blood, because all the choroidal bleed was coming through the retinotomy in the vitreous cavity and causing limited visibility. So we injected PFCL of the posterior pole, and that helped the blood iron out to the periphery, and then we drained all the blood to the peripheral large retinotomy. So the point here is, if you clear all the blood and all your breaks are well lasered, this bleed will spontaneously resolve on its own in a couple of weeks. And if you leave blood and hope that it will resolve by itself, sometimes that does not happen, especially in RD cases if there is silicone oil in situ. And these clots sometimes form and they retract and they form additional breaks, which can lead to re-RDs. And this was a case where there was a lot of PVR after blood had been left, and we had to go inside and remove all these degraded hemoglobin blood, and trim the edges of the breaks, make them fresh, and reinsert oil. So if a large amount of oil is there in the post-operative period, it's a good idea to go in early and not wait them to contract and create additional breaks, causing a re-RD. This was an interesting case of optic disc pit in a pediatric patient. The patient was 6-year-old, and there was residual suction of the cutter after stopping the cutting. So there was a residual suction even after lifting the foot switch off, and you can see that the optic disc, there is fluid egress from the pit when there is a hypotony in that case. So now you can see there is a residual suction, and I'm going near the pit, and when I stop the cutter, you can see the pulsating optic disc pit. Because of the hypotony, the fluid is coming out of the pit, and actually it helped me delineate the pit size and the pit location, and we finally decided to peel the ILM and plug the ILM inside that pit, and we had a good satisfactory outcome after that. So this is the pit in which there was a fluid coming out into the vitreous cavity, and in these cases it makes sense to plug the pit because that is the source of the fluid, and the retinoschisis. So to conclude, infusion misdirection resulting in hypotony seems to be infrequent, but still remains a risk. And awareness of the problem reduces the incidence, but does not eliminate it. To touch the retina, choroid, and the lens are the potential complications when hypotony occurs, and can be avoided with all the points we have already discussed, like correct positioning of the cannula, checking the machine parameters, and placing external anchorage like taping the 23 gauge infusion pipe. Of course, walled cannulas are a huge advantage over non-walled in maintaining the IOP, and early management and detecting the cause of the hypotony is the key to success, lest things go out of hand. Thank you.